essentially what I've heard is that there's a new team that's being built that's focused on in video shopping. So essentially, you remember the X-ray that came out that's like, okay, let's stop, pause the show.
Yeah.
Now there's going to be a retail component to it that's like the in-video shoppability of things. And it's very interesting because there's some high-level leadership that's moved over to this project that really represents an investment there.
Yeah.
I think part of it is that we saw that through Prime Video, like new titles, Lord of the Rings coming out, like Prime membership skyrocketed. And we know that Amazon's always been focused on that long game. Prime membership is the natural ingress to just like multiple other touch points of building basket, becoming more ingrained in the ecosystem. So it seems like further investment towards that.
Yeah, I think that makes a ton of sense. I think if you look at two of Amazon's kind of biggest assets, you have the retail business, but then you have this massive streaming business, which up until I would say pretty recently, the entire justification is you get more people into the Prime membership, and then they buy products, which is true, but they also are spending billions and billions of dollars on producing streaming content. I think Lord of the Rings was one of, if not the most expensive show ever produced for a streaming service. So
I mean, most of it was purely to get the title.
Yeah,
is what's interesting.
Just the IP itself. Yeah. So you have, that is a justification, but I think there's got to be a next thing in terms of how to better connect these two giant assets, because they're really entirely disconnected of this. I mean, yes, you have the Prime membership that, hey, I bought the Prime membership to watch this show, and now I have free shipping, so I'm probably going to buy more things. Yes, that works. But otherwise, there's so much potential kind of connectivity that just the technical components haven't been built out. And I mean, and then when you layer in the advertising business on top of that, you also have this issue where you have very high funnel advertising opportunities. You run what is essentially a commercial during one of these shows, or kind of on a banner on Fire TV, but that is still, for the most part, a pretty disconnected experience from then going and buying, paper towels or running shoes on the platform. I think so. That makes a ton of sense. I think we're going to see a lot of new initiatives and testing to try to better integrate these two things, where you get a true kind of full funnel experience from, hey, I watched a show, and a much more sort of literal connection of, this, then this, then this, then purchase a product. And by the way, there's a secondary revenue stream there too, where you're charging brands to advertise to pull the customer down through the funnel.
Well, see, that's what's interesting, is that there's an advertising component to it that right now brands are hyper focused on the performance element and the conversion aspect of advertising. They're questioning, like, is the branding what we want to focus on with limited budgets, given the macroeconomic landscape? And so this is, I think, going to be a very interesting avenue for advertising that sort of brings it to, we're not just, doing this giant OTT banner that's talking about our brand. How do we get to like the performance and the conversion aspect of it? And it's integrating that, as well as, I mean, we've seen that, yes, retail is plugging along. E-commerce is still doing good, especially compared to brick and mortar stores. Like, there's definitely a downhill, a decrease there, and we're seeing steady within e-commerce, but steady's not good enough for Amazon.
I don't think they see it as massive growth.
It's not, well, and what we're seeing year over year is that, 5 years ago it was, we're holding strong, we see, 28% growth, which is great, we're beating everyone else. Then it's, we have 20% growth, we're doing just as good as everyone else. And I think year after year, they're seeing that start to decrease. And so it's saying, how do we bolster other disparate areas of our business to bolster retail? And think about how to supplement there. And so it's bringing retail into the forefront with this new in-shopping experience. And so I think that is completely the idea, is support advertising, but with the real goal of bolstering retail.
Yeah, I mean, I think it fits into the flywheel concept where they all kind of self-reinforce one another. The interesting thing you said, though, which is what Amazon is sort of effectively creating here, is upper funnel performance marketing.
Yep.
Which seems like a contradiction, but I mean, that's basically what
term.
it is. That might be a new term, yeah, because it seems very, very much a contradiction, but you're going from someone with no purchase intent, sitting there, bored on a Tuesday night watching a show, to potentially being able to directly connect their activity all the way down to they're picking out the color and size
100%.
and making a purchase. Now, not necessarily in that same moment, but potentially coming back multiple touch points, or potentially in that moment where they are actually clicking from bored on a Tuesday night all the way down to purchase.
I mean, this is just like thinking big, but I mean, imagine you're watching Marvelous Miss Maisel, and I'm like so guilty of like catalog shopping like crazy and like circling things.
Yeah. You're
watching Marvelous Miss Maisel, I go, oh my God, I love that dress.
Yep.
And maybe I'm like, I need a little bit of time to think about it. This is a $200 dress. It's a lot of money. They're doing a lot with big brands and luxury stores, especially in Amazon fashion. But I go down and I like it. And it adds it to my wish list in my cart. And I can go back and think about it. And then when I'm shopping for my household essentials, I see, oh, I saved this. It's on my mind, but still, like you said, within that performance, that like it's right around that conversion point.
Yeah.
That it's right there, it's in front of me. I don't have to research it and re-find it in order to make that purchase.
Well, and then did you see the virtual product placement that I don't know if they officially announced or kind of doubled down on it at Unboxed. This is like, it kind of went under the radar. It hasn't been talked about much because it's very much in beta form. So it literally is the ability to, in post-production, take a scene, a piece of content, but a scene from a show or a movie. Now, it has to be contemporary or it won't make any sense. So it can't be like Lord of the Rings. But a contemporary show, and virtually introduce a product into the shot that looks 100% seamless. It's not like some cartoon stuck over the top. You would never know that wasn't a physical object in the production. Now, that's interesting as a post-production, you can put a box of Kleenex.
That's
or
an
a Diet
advertising
Coke,
vehicle, though.
right? But exactly. So
wow,
doing that post-production is cool, but what gets really cool is the fact that you now can segment product placement by customer segment. So you and I might be watching the same show, but because of you're in one bucket of customer archetype, you see the Diet Coke, I'm in another bucket of customer archetype, so I see a Mountain Dew. Yeah. No, exactly, right?
Totally.
And
that is wild.
Yeah, and that's available right now. It's still kind of it's much more like hands-on customized. They're trying to build a scale solution to this.
That should be exciting brands.
Yeah, and it's going to plug into DSP. So
Absolutely.
All of the same targeting you can use with DSP, you can now virtually do product placement. By the way, it's not just items. It's billboards in the background, signage in the background. I mean, so it's not just like, well, what if we're an airline or a bank? You don't have a product? Well, there's billboards. In lots of shots, there's billboards. All of a sudden, you can change the billboard dynamically depending on what customer's watching it. That sounds like science fiction. That's happening right now. And it's another one of those turning what would be a very high funnel, like the highest, a billboard is as high funnel as you can get, into literally a trackable, targetable ad asset that on a platform where it can be directly attributed to purchase. Like, that's crazy.
I think that's what brands need to focus on as they're thinking about brand awareness strategy, is thinking about those type of innovations in a digital sense. And it's gonna rock the foundations of advertising even, of saying, hey, we thought of upper funnel in this way, that, the physical, and thinking about our traditional channels for that upper funnel. No, that is becoming part of the digital ecosystem as well, which is really interesting, because there's the messaging, there's the branding. You can really, this demonstrates the ability to get the full funnel through video and streaming services, which is interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, questions off of this, but what sort of brand should try this out?
Yeah,
Enterprise.
Enterprise, but for some specific reasons, because this stuff is quite experimental, and most brands, most mid-market and smaller brands, just don't have a big enough budget typically to max out the lower funnel stuff. So you need to at least be the type of brand that's willing to like throw some money at stuff to see what works, not because you're getting the best ROI, but because you want to be early. And you want to have those early opportunities to find that kind of arbitrage of like, okay, we tried 3 things, they went okay, we got some learning, and then the 4th is like, okay, this is huge and no one's doing it yet, so let's just like go all in on this for the next 6 months where everyone else figures it out.
I think you also have to have a certain level of brand recognition already. That like I think that it doesn't resonate. It's not going to stand out to someone if they don't know the brand. Like imagine your scenario that it's a billboard in the background.
Because you're reinforcing the brand versus like, I've never heard of that.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think that's true. I will say, now there's this virtual product placement thing, which is, the idea is you're taking a totally unconnected to the product show and you're just getting the product in front of people in the show. But there's also examples, and Amazon's done this already, and I think they're going to do more of it, where you're actually producing a show around a product, or at least a product category, with more of a sort of shopping entertainment hybrid experience, like from pre-production forward. So I forgot the name of it, they did a fashion show, I think it's in multiple seasons now, where it's like one of those fashion reality shows, fashion designer reality shows. I should probably know more about this, but they're from the beginning working with brands to like have the products, make it shoppable. So it's a similar idea, but a different kind of execution.
Sure.
That I actually think has the potential to create a brand, right? Where you can say, this is a cool new dress, you know, kind of upstart fashion brand, and then we're gonna go all in on this show, and that's gonna be like our big moment.
Again, it has to be at the mid-level though, because the investment for that is
it's just expensive.
Nothing to scoff
for
at.
sure. Yeah, it's not. I mean, yes, that's a fair point. You can't be like a 3-person design shop. Like, you've got to have a serious budget behind you. But I still think more of those like disruptor, you know, venture backed, they have capital, they're kind of partway through their life cycle, like, but still like scrappier disruptor brands.
I think this is just on my mind because of the recent news, but like, you know, it's not an LG or Samsung of the world, but you know, they have some notoriety and probably some budget, being very focused on digital to execute something like that. For major brand awareness.
It's I think that's a good example.